Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for joining us this morning or this afternoon, I guess now. My name is Corey Kersley. I'm the Executive Director for the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce, and Bruce Coleman, who is our presenter today, is also our weekly co-host for this call. He represents the city. He's the Economic Development Manager for the city. And so before Bruce gets into his presentation, I just wanted to remind everyone of our small business and entrepreneur education series. We just had our second session last week. It was a really good session. I am in the process of uploading the recording of that to the chamber website so that if you want to go back and listen to that, it was a really good conversation with three different professionals who represent key advisors for most small businesses: an accountant, an attorney, and a business banker. So some good conversation about how they can assist individually and collectively businesses as they grow. And our next one will be in September 17th. And that will be all about international business and finance. So in business, what's that?
Exporting and those kinds of things.
Yeah, all of those kinds of things. So if you're in any kind of industry where that could be play a role for you, then we encourage you to participate. There is no cost. Thank you to Metro and Banner Bank for a sponsorship for allowing us to do this without having to charge anyone. So Bruce is going to be talking today about the two new small business grants that the city of Sherwood is facilitating. And the deadline is coming up on Friday, and Bruce will go over all of this. But Bruce, do you want to take questions as you go, or do you want
to? I'm glad to, or to go through it. Either way, I'm always flexible. I did have one announcement.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that, and then I'll just let you go ahead and get started.
Not related to these two grants, but the county, Washington County, has just come out with the child care provider grant program. If I recall correctly, it just opened for taking applications today. And there's information I know on the city's economic development website. We did social media, and Corey got it out. I'm pretty sure I'm a little behind on my emails, but I'm sure Corey got it out just so to everybody that he knows. And we just want to make sure, because child care is so important to recovery, as we all know, and getting businesses going again. So we're so excited to see the county doing that. Anyway, you want me to just go into what I got?
Yeah, let me just add to that if you may not be in the childcare business, but if you know of people who are childcare providers, please let them know that this is available. We can only send it out to the contacts that we know about, and childcare is kind of one of those industries where they don't do a lot of advertising for a lot of them. It's kind of word of mouth, and so we don't know about a lot of them that are out there. So please share this with those that you may know about. Okay, with that, go ahead, Bruce.
Can I ask
Bruce, hang on. Dave has a question.
Yeah. Oh, Dave, I heard feedback. Sorry.
I was asked to get on board with the meeting for the Sherwood Historical Society. I'm one of the directors over there, and I just want to find out, first of all, is there any merit for me being in this meeting as a representative?
Well, let me ask you this: Are you representing the society or businesses that may be interested?
No, the society.
Okay, for the society, is it a 501c3?
Yeah.
Okay, so you should listen.
Okay.
The money could be available for 501c3s. That's the only nonprofit type that it could be eligible for.
Thanks.
Okay, so I think I start. Ready? Okay. So essentially, these are, as Corey said, these are two new programs that we're offering. They're using state monies and federal monies, and because of that, there are various requirements that apply when you're using either federal or state money that we have to tell you about, and we have to ask you to comply with in submitting your application to us. The two grants are one from the state of Oregon, which is Business Oregon, which is the state agency, and that's a $35,000 grant citywide. So that money is a limited amount of money in that program, but we're glad to have at least been awarded a $35,000 grant by the state. The other grant is bigger. It's a federal CARES Act grant, and that was submitted to us or provided to us by Washington County, and that's for $248,000, not for one business, but for the entire city, for businesses within the entire city. As Corey said, yeah.
Okay, let me just, if I could just clarify, just to make sure everyone's on the same page here. Even though the grants were awarded to the city's job is to in turn award those to businesses in the community. That's not money for the city. It's for the city to disperse to businesses.
Good point. Yeah, this is for businesses, and it's not money that we're keeping. In fact, we can't keep it. So in our agreements with these two funding agencies, we have to get this money out there to the businesses that meet the requirements. So, and also the applications are to the city. They're not to the county. They're not to the federal government. They're not to the state government. They're not to Corey. They have to come to us, and there's a process for that. One of the applications I think already went to Corey, and he sent it over to us at the city, which is where it has to come. So I think I mentioned that the application announcements, the actual applications themselves came out this past Monday, and you can find them on the city's website. Then they're all due by no later than 5 p.m. this coming Friday, the 28th. We can't accept them if they come in late. So this is financial assistance for small businesses. As Corey said, it's not for us. It's not for the city government. And they have to be adversely affected by COVID-19. You have to demonstrate that to us, because when we get audited, we're going to have to demonstrate that to the federal government and the state government. You can apply for both. You can apply for either program or both programs, but you're going to have to demonstrate when you do that you're not applying for the same money for the same purpose. We can't have any double dipping, and I'll go over that again because that's really important. These are not loans. People have complained in the past that everything was so much that was coming out from the federal government was loans, and people needed grants. So these are grants, and you don't repay them. So just some guidance on completing the application forms. They're starting to come in. I just wanted to indicate that one of them came in blank to us, and we realized that we better add something to the website that explained that when you're filling in the application forms from the web browser, that may not save your information, all that work you did. To save your information, you're going to have to select print to PDF, and then you can submit it to us. But just make sure you've saved it before trying to submit it to us. Please read the applications carefully. Please read the program descriptions carefully. They're all on the website. And because if they're incomplete or inaccurate applications, they might not get accepted. And if documentation is requested, which it is in some cases, please attach it to your application so we're getting a complete application. This PowerPoint that I'm going through is really a summary. It doesn't cover everything, so that's why the program descriptions and the applications are really important for you to look at. Talking about the first one, which is the one that has more money attached to it, the $248,000. That is a federal CARES Act grant that came to the city, I have to say, through the county. That's one of our obligations. It was distributed to us by the county, but it's federal money. $248,000 in grant to the city, which we have to give out to our businesses as grants. The monies must be used to pay for your business expenses or your costs that you've incurred due to this health crisis, the COVID crisis. And those business costs cover a period from March 8th through December 30th. Now, I don't know that anybody's going to submit anything to us, any expenditures through December 30th, but that's what the federal law says. So we just repeated that in our materials.
So Bruce,
Yeah.
can I ask a clarifying question on that
Yeah.
last point there? So does that mean that if somebody anticipates that a loss between Friday, which is the application day, and December 31st, that they can use that money, they can apply for that money?
There's no clarification from these funding agencies of that. I think it's probably, some people have come in and they've asked for money for September 1 rent. I think that's pretty legitimate, okay? Because we're just about in September, but I think I'd be a little careful about going out and asking for some money that you might need in November. You can't get clarification from the feds or the state on some of these questions. So we're just going to have to do the best we can. But I think I'd be a little careful about coming in for something that's a December expected cost, because I don't know how you're going to show us what that is and prove it. That's just my initial thought. Does that help answer? Best I can.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I had a feeling that was going to be a little confusing, but we wanted to put it in just to clarify what the federal requirement says. Let's see. Okay. So there's various requirements that come with this program. One is you have to have a current city business license. So the last time we did a grant program, and this was back in April, some of you may recall that, we got a lot of business license applications coming in all at once. But assuming we're open, we're glad to work with people. But you do have to have a current City of Sherwood business license. And you have to have a physical facility in the city. Someone had proposed that because they had a post office box in the city and they were in the county area, unincorporated Sherwood, that they should be eligible. I'm sorry. A post office box or a location outside the city limits doesn't count. This has to be used within the city itself. So it could be a brick and mortar business space, a commercial space, for example. Could be a home-based business. Would be eligible to apply, but it has to be in the jurisdiction of Sherwood. Let me explain that for a minute. I think in the application there's a reference to a map. I think there's a link to the map, as I recall. There are many people who think they're in Sherwood, but they're not really in the city of Sherwood. You might think you're in Sherwood because you're in the Sherwood School District. You might think you're in Sherwood because you have not a post office box, but a postal address in Sherwood, but you may not be in the city limits. This can only be used within the city limits. And so we included a map to try to help clarify that. We're going to need your W-9. We're going to need your federal tax ID number, your Sherwood business license number with the application. And you got to, throughout this process, you have to prove, and this is almost a quote from the law, that you've been adversely impacted economically by COVID. That's not too hard to do, quite frankly. I don't think, for most businesses. So there's a limit on the number of employees. This is a small business program. And in this case, small business is defined as 25 or fewer FTE, full-time equivalent employees. And we backdated that to February the 29th, which is to your advantage, because that was before COVID. So if you had 25 employees then, and God forbid you have 2 now, you may as well take advantage of the fact that you had 25 then, because it can help you in this process. Let's see. Going here. I'm sorry, did I go too far? Oh, I went the wrong way. It helps when I either take my glasses on or put them off, I guess. I'm going to put this closer. So the grants are for operating expenses. And again, made necessary. This is almost a quote by COVID-19 emergency. End quote. I already talked about I realized that I did this twice, the expense period that we're talking about. If you're part of a chain, you got to be a locally owned franchise. I mean, we love the big corporations that are franchises, the restaurants and what have you, but I assure you I better use more than one. Burger King and McDonald's corporation stores don't need this kind of help. We're here to help the small businesses that are locally owned in the community. You can be a for-profit, and as David asked, you can be a nonprofit, a 501c3 only. Yay, Dave. You're going to have to explain in the application how you want to use the grant funds. And you need to provide documentation with the grant. Once again, how you were affected by, with the application, how you were affected by COVID-19. I know I'm repeating myself, but we haven't gotten that in every case. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So also, if you previously received a grant from the city of Sherwood, we called it the Small Business Emergency Relief Program. This was back in April, March and April. If you previously received that grant, that was for $2,250. You can still apply for this, but you gotta show us in your application what you used the April grant from the city for, and you cannot show it as the same expenditure that you're going to use this new grant for. That's the no double dip rule. We've got to be able to show that if you ask, for example, if you got money back in April from the city and you used it for your May rent, well, you're obviously not going to use this new grant for your May rent, but show us that. You're going to use it for your September rent or whatever. Just show us that you're not double dipping. Also, we're going to look at priorities, because my suspicion is there's going to be more applications than we have money if history proves true again. So our priority is going to be given to businesses that were forced to close completely due to the governor's orders. But that's not the only thing. There's another priority for businesses that were restricted in their operations due to the governor's orders. Then another priority is going to be given to businesses that use the money, for example, to pay their mortgage expenses, their business mortgage expenses, their rent or their lease payments or their utility payments. So for their physical facility in Sherwood, there's already been money coming out from the feds that focus on payroll. That doesn't mean to say you couldn't do payroll, but the priority in this particular program is for physical related expenses, because if you're not paying your rent, then there's a bigger problem. So, as we all know. So I'm going to keep going here. Some additional requirements. At the time of the grant, our priority is that you should not have received any other federal CARES Act dollars, by which we mean, if you all recall, the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP. We never even heard of this back in February, did we? But the PPP program, the EIDL program, which is the Federal Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, if you got that money, or if you got some other kind of federal money for pandemic relief, for business pandemic relief. So you can apply if you got that money, but it's not the priority. It's not going to be given an extra point, okay? Because we're trying to get money out to more businesses that maybe didn't get the PPP or the EIDL. Also, we're going to give some priority to businesses located in a storefront, whether it's industrial space, office space, retail space, what have you. Could be in a micro space, but more in a physical space. If you're a home-based business, you can still apply. It's just that the priority is really for the brick and mortar, if we can. So let's see, next page. So just maybe want to emphasize that if you received PPP, EIDL, or some other kind of federal pandemic grant for businesses, or if you got some kind of a grant from the state of Oregon or Business Oregon, or if you got somehow some monies from Washington County under the CARES Act, you can still apply for this program, but you're going to have to, again, show us that you're using it for a different expenditure. Once again, the example is if you got money from PPP and you used it for your rent in June, well, you're not going to show us in this application that you're using it again for June. You're going to show us that you're using it for September. That's just my example of, I hope that's clear. Okay, so what are the grant amounts? We're focused on encouraging some more for firms that have some more employment, so try to match it to full-time employment, and again, back to the February 29th date. But if you're 0 to 5 full-time employment, it's a $2,500 grant. And you can see on the screen for 16 to 25 full-time employees, it gets up to $5,000. The idea is to get as much money out as we can to as many businesses as we can. Okay, so the next page is also on the Federal CARES Act program that I've been talking about. This is the $248,000 grant program where we got that grant. We do expect that we're going to have more applications than we're going to have money for. We don't know at this stage, but we'll find out pretty soon. We're asking you to give us complete applications with all the attachments and documentation that's called for in the application. And hopefully that's clear. You can always find me and I'll try to answer your questions. But after the applications close on a late Friday afternoon, we're gonna start reviewing the applications, seeing if they're complete, if the businesses are eligible. And then from there, we're going to, those that are eligible and complete, we're going to assign points to it. And those points are described, I didn't describe them in here, but they're described in the program description. So those are the priority points. Even if you don't get those, doesn't mean you're not going to get the grant. We just have to see how many grants come in, how many applications come in. And without going over too much detail here, but then we want to get the monies out as quickly as we can. We're going to have to go through this process, and then we'll get out notices of awards. And if you haven't given us your W-9, we're going to need to get your W-9. So that is the discussion on that program. And I was going to next go into the State of Oregon, Business Oregon program, if we're ready. Okay, so in different places, we refer to State of Oregon and Business Oregon. They're really one and the same thing. What Business Oregon means is it's the State of Oregon's economic development agency. They're the statewide agency that's funneling this money to us so we can get it to you. And this is the one where we got a grant of $35,000 awarded to us. Again, as Corey said, this is not for us to keep, it's for us to get out. In fact, we can't keep it. If we don't use it, we got to send it back to the state. So we would like to give it to you if you meet the criteria. And
hey, Bruce.
Yeah.
Did you forward the slide? We're still seeing the federal CARES funding slide.
Wow. You are? Let me go back.
At least I am.
That's the last one in Federal CARES Act. This is the first one on State of Oregon. You're not seeing that?
No.
I see it. I see State of Oregon.
Okay. Well, if they see it, oh, there we go. Now I see it.
Oh, okay. Maybe there was just a delay.
Yeah, maybe so.
Okay. So this program very specifically says that if you receive Federal CARES Act funds, PPP, EIDL, don't apply because it excludes businesses that already got that kind of money, and it makes them ineligible. So I just wanted to mention that kind of up front, and I'll maybe go over that a little bit more. I think I've got more on that a little later. Once again, my favorite statement, I think it's my favorite, is you have to be adversely impacted economically by COVID-19. I don't think that's a very hard test, but you have to prove it in your application with documents or with information. You'll see when you look at the application. There's a lot of requirements in this program, and it's just because there were a lot of state requirements. When the legislature approved the money, they told Business Oregon, you have to require X, Y, and Z, so we got to require X, Y, and Z. So these are one-time grants, and they're really to support and help businesses stay open or reopen as soon as they can. Hopefully this next one will be seen. So what are the requirements? Well, some of them, a few of these are actually our requirements, city requirements. You're going to have a Sherwood business license. That's pretty standard. You're going to have a physical facility in the city limits. Once again, you got to be in the city limits of Sherwood. I had somebody ask me the other day, well, they're a block from the city limits. They have a Sherwood address. They got a post office address in Sherwood. Why can't they be considered? Well, they can't. It's just, we can't be giving money outside the city limits. And so you can be a for-profit business or a nonprofit business, a 501c3, once again. And you're going to have to demonstrate that you're prohibited. Well, there's two alternatives. You can show us how you were affected by COVID, either by demonstrating that you were prohibited from operations under the governor's order. That's one way of doing it. And a lot of businesses were closed or whatever based on the governor's order. So you were prohibited from operations, and that's all in the governor's order. And I think there's a link to the governor's order both in the program description on this program and I think in the application itself. So it should be easy to see it. But you know if you were prohibited from operations. Or you can demonstrate by providing documentation to us, such as a sales report that shows a decline of let's see, greater than 50% in your sales. It's either a profit and loss statement or a sales report. And it's kind of explained in the slide. It's explained in more detail in the application process. But you either do one or the other. And there's a reason for it, as we'll talk about in a few moments. I'm going to keep going then. So,
Bruce,
yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you mentioned before about being in the city limits. If somebody is not in the city limits, this is the same grant program that the credit unions were doing, correct?
Yes, correct.
And I know at least one, the Trailhead Credit Union, is still accepting applications. So if you're not in the Sherwood city limits, you can still apply for this grant. You just have to do it through one of the credit unions that has also been given money for this fund. That's an accurate statement?
Correct. And this may be another factor. The county gave us $248,000 to get out to businesses, but they have a much larger pot of money that they have had for the unincorporated area. In other words, the county areas that are not within the cities. And I don't think they gave out all that money. Now, what they're going to do, I don't know yet, but you should, I don't know how to communicate it with you, but you should kind of be mindful of what the county is going to do with money. We're trying to watch that as closely as we can because, maybe they'll do another round for the areas that are unincorporated because they didn't get as many applications as they thought they would get. So, and there was a pretty big pot of money that the county kept for that purpose. Let me see. So once again, we made it the same, 25 employees or less as of February the 29th of this year. And again, as I was saying before, at the time of this grant, this Business Oregon grant that we hopefully give to you, you cannot have received the PPP, which is the Payroll Protection Program from the U.S. Small Business Administration, or the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Loan Program, which is also from the Small Business Administration. So you would know if you already received those, because people have submitted, they asked us, they said they've received it, and we've said, well, that's one of the criteria that makes you ineligible under this program, this Business Oregon program. The state says you've got to be headquartered in Oregon. You got to have principal operations in Oregon. That's a state requirement. The state says that if you have to be registered with the Secretary of State as a business, you are registered. And that unless the executive order of the governor says that you have to be closed, you have to be open, or you have to be reopened for business. So I didn't phrase that very well. So unless you're been advised by the executive order of the governor, you have to be open or have reopened for business. So again, if you're part of a chain, this is a city requirement. We're looking for locally owned franchises or locally owned businesses rather than corporate national franchises or nationally owned businesses. Let's see. So also, we're still talking about the state and Business Oregon. And again, this is a grant. It's not a loan. The grants can range from per business from $2,500 to $25,000. So if we got an application for $25,000, we'd only have $10,000, and we approved it. We'd only have $10,000 left citywide. So it gives you an idea of how this money could go pretty quickly, I would guess. And the range is really dependent upon the number of employees that you have and or you had back in February as a business. And I think I'm going to go over that a little bit more, but we'll see. Or you can give certain documentation, and I'm going to go over that. You can give certain documentation, and you could get a higher grant amount. This is all state requirements. So you can use the monies for any business operating purpose. And when I asked the state what that means, they said, don't use it to buy a personal car for yourself. That's pretty obvious. So, so they said it's very open, and just don't do anything that is really for your personal use. Let's see, I think for the next page. Right, so so businesses that got a grant from the city, and you know who you are, back in April, you can apply for this new money. Just, again, use it for different expenditures. Show us in your application, just like I said before, that you're not using it for the same month's rent that you got the city's grant for in April. It's really important because for various legal reasons, and again, I call that no double dipping. You can use it for a different purpose. So just show us that in your application. Okay, there's certain kinds of businesses that are ineligible. Passive real estate companies. In other words, a company, I'm going to make it up, out of Chicago that just owns a lot of businesses in Sherwood. They're not involved in the operations. They can't apply to us. This is not money for a big real estate holding company. You have to be current on your federal, state, and local taxes. And really what you're going to do is you're going to just check off a certificate, sign a certification that you are. We don't have a way of checking that. You have to, if you're ineligible, if you're not headquartered in Oregon or have your principal business location in Oregon, that's what the state says. If you already received, I don't know how you would have, but if you already received money, well, I know how you might have. If you already received COVID-19 grant funds from Business Oregon, you can't get money again. And I think that relates to what Corey was saying. So if you saw the thing that came out on the credit unions providing this kind of money for businesses, if you got a grant from, I can't remember the name of the credit unions, there were 3 or 4 of them, but from a credit union, and it was Business Oregon, State of Oregon money, don't apply under this program because they're going to know that, and they're going to just reject it anyway. So, so please know if your credit union, gave you some money. Those were grants from the credit unions coming from Business Oregon. And there may be some other ways that you could have gotten Business Oregon money already during this COVID period. You're going to know where your money came from, and it just isn't applicable.
And just to clarify, Bruce, that's just for this Business Oregon grant, not for the other one.
This program. And I hope that's not confusing. This is confusing. We decided to put these programs out at the same time. And there was a benefit to it because we really wanted to get the money out there. We got the grants at the same time, but it is a little confusing. I get that, and that's why I want to be available. If you're not registered with the Secretary of State and you're supposed to be, you're not eligible. If you, and I said before, if you got the city grant back in April, just don't use it for the same. Don't use this new money for a different purpose. Okay, a different business operating purpose. All right, so we're going to keep going here. Okay, I want to talk about the grant amounts, and it's all employee size based, as you can see. So if you're 0 to 5 employees, you could be a $2,500 grant. If you're 21 to 25 employees, you could be a $12,000 grant. That's fairly simple. If, however, you're looking for a larger grant, then let's say in the 0 to 5 category, you want to get a larger grant than $2,500. You want to get maybe a $5,000 grant. You're going to have to submit something to us, and that is you're going to have to submit to us your what's called the fixed expenses you had for a 60-day period, and it's defined in the grant. This sounds very complicated, I know. You got to read the application itself to understand this fully. I know I had to read it twice. But if you want a larger grant, you have to do a little extra work and submit some paperwork to us. Okay. If you're just looking for not just $2,500 is a lot of money, but if you're looking for $2,500, if you're in the 0 to 5 category, that's, you're just going to show that in your application that's what you're asking for. You're not going to have to submit as much information. So I put in italics, if you wish to be considered for the amount that requires the 60-day fixed expense information, be sure to submit it with your application. We're getting applications now which have documents attached, which are receipts or which are profit and loss statements or whatever. That's that kind of information is going to help in this process in reviewing your application. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. Not a good time. So once again, this is very limited amount of funding, and under this state program, this is the $35,000 program. Please give us complete applications. Look through your applications. Take some time to do it. Try to make sure that you're answering all the questions thoroughly. It's not really all that hard. We've gotten some already that have done that. Thank you. I guess that was the end. And glad to try to answer any questions that I can. And you'll see my contact information. And if I'm sitting at my desk, I'll answer that phone. If I'm not, I'll call you back. But you can always email me at that address shown in the email.
Okay, so I have a question.
I know.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
On the previous one that you were talking about, the CARES one, do you have to attach all your receipts for if you received a grant from the Trailhead Credit Union, then do you attach your receipts of how you spent that to prove that you're not going to spend something similar in this new one?
Well, it would be great if you would, because we could be audited by the county, which is where the money is coming from. And when I asked the county auditor, I said, could we just have people self-certify by signing a document that says that they got it for a different purpose? And they said, okay, but it'd be much better to be able to prove it if the auditors come around. And I'm not an auditor, so I don't know exactly what auditors look at. So if you can do that, that would be great. Very much appreciated. But what you're going to do in this application is you're going to actually tell us in writing, or type it, or you can hand write it or whatever. You're going to actually be telling us what you got that money for. There's a place on that form where you can do that. And if you've seen the application, you'll see it's there. If you're able to, there's not a lot of time left and between now and Friday. So if you can get us receipts, people have been doing that. That'd be appreciated.
Okay, and then for that, in addition to that, for the one that I'm applying for, the CARES Act, if I'm just a number 3, I'm probably really low on the totem pole. But if there's a chance, and I have everything in there, do I have to have documentation of how I'm going to spend that money, like a receipt or some kind of, this is what I'm going to buy? You know what I mean?
Well, I think in that case, you're going to tell us. Some people have come in and they say, well, we're going to pay for September's rent. Well, September's not here yet, so there's no receipt. Somebody did give us, for example, a form that says this is what they have to pay each month. So September, October, and then they said they were going to pay for September's, but they gave us that kind of a form. I think that's helpful to know in case people come knocking at our door and asking us where this money went and how it got spent. So we're trying to be really careful because these are other people's money. It's always other people's money, but this is federal and state money. So I don't think you can easily show us a receipt for September, for example. Right. So, just have to be realistic about this. I think tell us what you're going to use it for in that case. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Quick question.
This is complicated. Sorry, we didn't mean to make it so. Our last program was so easy, but that was city general fund money, and we didn't have all these federal and state regulations coming down on us. So the city manager kept saying, "Make this customer friendly," and I said to Joe, who's the city manager, we're going to make it as customer friendly as we can, but we have to meet these requirements. He knows that. So anyway, that's the deal.
Okay, I got a quick question. Since we're all volunteers, we don't have any paid employees per se. I'm imagining the FTE would be 0 to 5 in that range.
That's right.
Okay. And
Now,
all of our income comes this month from Music on the Green. Typically, we sell stuff there. And would we go by last year's figures as far as?
Let's see. So we're talking about which program? We're talking about
Federal CARES.
the Federal CARES program. So let me just think about that for a second. I have to go back and refresh my memory on this stuff. So
Yeah.
Let me see where I put it. Oh, here it is. So let's see. In the Federal CARES Act, I think. Oh no, it's the Federal CARES Act. I think just tell us. It's not as rigorous information. So just tell us what is the cause of your. How have you been impacted by COVID? Yeah. And I think you can easily tell that story. It's not a story. It's a little bit of information in the application that all your money was last year, that you need this August money. You're not going to get it because of COVID. I think just say that. And then basically you're going to ask for the grant. I mean, in the $2,500 category. So that's what I would do in this particular case. I'm just trying to see if I've missed anything in what I'm telling you. I think that's fine.
Okay, that's what I needed to know, though. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Bruce, I have a question. So you mentioned, like, for example, the Business Oregon grant, it's a limited amount of $35,000. You have potential awards for a business that has 21 to 25 employees of $12,500. Well, if you get 3 of those, then you've exhausted all your money, right? So
that would be right. They don't all get that amount.
Yeah. So in that case, I guess what my question is, rather than, let's say you have 10 applications total, and 3 of those would equal the 35,000 and exhaust all that money. So will the city, instead of giving the 12.5, will the city say, well, we can't give you 12.5, but we'll give you 5,500?
Yeah. As far as I understand the state's contract with us, this is a minimum and a maximum. It doesn't mean that we have to give the maximum. In other words, we don't have to give the 12,500 or whatever the number was that you were referring to. The 25,000. We don't have to give 25,000 because that's going to use up everything. But we have to balance various things here, and there's no decisions yet. Obviously, we don't even have the applications yet. But I would think that the way we would do it is we would say to a business, well, we've got so many of these applications, we maybe can't give you $25,000. That's my supposition. I don't think I'm going to be making that decision, but as I think you know,
that's above your pay grade.
We're going to have a selection committee, and we're going to have a city manager. So on the selection committee.
So I guess my point in asking the question was, if I'm a business or a nonprofit applying, I should not feel bad about applying for whatever the max is for my situation, for my number of employees, but I should understand that it's possible I may not receive that amount. I may receive something, but not that max amount.
Go for it. I mean,
yeah.
A good example of that is I had applied. We got this $35,000. I had applied to the state of Oregon for $200,000, and we got $35,000. As the way the state put it to me is, we have spread the peanut butter throughout the state of Oregon, and very thinly. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing. We'll just have to look at it, and some decisions are going to have to be made on this particular program, which is the Business Oregon program. We're actually going to, I think, fairly use some kind of a lottery, to try to select everybody who's eligible. And let's say we pull out the hat and somebody wants $25,000. We've got to figure out how that's going to work, basically. So we'll see. But I wouldn't make any assumptions on how these monies are going to be allocated at this point. It's too soon.
Yeah, and I would just emphasize to everybody, apply. If you're not sure, apply. Don't not apply because you think there's too many others that are going to apply. I don't know this for sure, but my sense is that because one of the requirements for the small business program, the 35,000 that you have, is that you can't have received an EIDL loan or a PPP loan. Well, I don't know a lot of businesses that didn't get that money. Right. And so I don't know how many businesses are even eligible for that loan. So if you are eligible, just apply. The worst thing that can happen is you spend a little time on the application and you don't get anything.
Right. I think I'm already. Sorry, Corey.
No, go ahead.
I agree. Go for it. And I've already told 3 businesses, I hate to do this, that came to the counter with their applications. They came in with both, and the first thing I noticed is in one case, or actually 3 cases, they have received PPP or EIDL money, and so it didn't work. So they said, "Well, shred it." Well, I'm not going to shred it. I took it in, but it doesn't really meet. It doesn't meet the qualifications or the eligibility requirements. So, but they submitted 2 applications, and that's fine. And also, although I think we've said in the program somewhere, I don't remember where it is anymore. Okay, applications. I thought I saw it. Well, someplace I thought we said, I can't see it now, submit online to us. Well, people have been submitting them in person. We really want to make this as easy as possible. Some businesses aren't comfortable doing it online or submitting it online to us. We want to be available. People have been coming to the counter during our counter hours, which are 8 to noon when the counter is open in City Hall, or they're coming in for an appointment after hours, which is fine with me. We want to be as flexible as possible.
So Bruce, that raises a question. So if somebody waits until Friday to submit the application and for whatever reason they can't get the technology to work and they need to do it in person, they need to go before noon then? Is that
I would
correct?
Do that, or it's a little risky just calling me. I mean, I think I would be okay if you submitted it. You can't, you're not comfortable with the technology, so we're going to need to sort of date stamp it. So you ought to call me and or send me an email in case I miss a call. I'm one person. I'm usually running around, but hopefully you can get it in sooner because City Hall's not open to the public after noon on Friday. But I'll take it in personally if you give me a call.
Does the city still have the buckets outside the door where like packages can be left?
I'm just afraid that you could put it in there, but I'm just afraid that the buckets are there for planning applications, engineering applications, building applications. I'm afraid we just might not see it. So if you do that, maybe tell me in an email that that's where you put it. It's a little scary. Somebody may have picked it up and, who knows whose desk it went to. So it's best just to stay in touch with me if you think you're going to be a little late, not after 5 o'clock, but a little late. How about that? Is that fair enough? I want to be available to you.
Okay. Dave, Darla, you have any other questions that you want to ask?
You're recording this. Can we get a tag where we get the recording?
Yes, we are recording it. So once we finish up and I get the final version of the recording, I will post that on the chamber website. When you go to the main website page, sherwoodchamber.org, there's a big banner that says coronavirus resources. You click on that and then it'll be right near the top of the list of resources you can click on.
Good.
Well, thanks, Bruce. And I just want to, on behalf of the entire business community, thank the city for taking the time and the resources to go after this money and distribute it to our business community. It was not required that the city do this, but we appreciate their understanding and their recognition of how important the business and nonprofit community is to Sherwood, and how this money could be life-saving for many of these our businesses and nonprofits. So thank you, Bruce, and the rest of the staff for your time and efforts in putting the application process together, and then having to sift through and go through that process of selecting recipients. And so I guess with that, I don't have any other questions. So if there are no other questions, then we will go ahead and conclude. And thank you again for participating, and good luck in your applications, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. And you can find me. So thanks. Bye.
Thank you.